Hi, and welcome to Spiritual Alchemy Energy, the Transfigurations, the podcast. Tonight we have Dr. Greg Nielsen with us talking about his book, Star Consciousness. I have to ask, who calls you Daddy Pants?
Oh, you must have read the book.
Yes,
I do have
did.
son. My son is 30, but when he was little, for some reason, he called me Daddy Pants. I have no idea why. I never asked him. I just said, okay, that's fine. I'll take that. And when I went to visit him at his college years ago, they all called me Daddy Pants right away when I came to campus. So,
Oh, that's great. I love it.
I guess it's a term of endearment, and he still calls me Daddy Pants. So
I love it. That's
cute.
sweet.
Yeah, it's cute. Yeah. He's a good kid.
How many books have you written, including the one that's coming out next year called Gateway to Stardust?
I think Gateway to Stardust. I think that's my 13th or 14th book.
Oh wow!
So, but you have to realize I'm getting so it's really that much when you figure a whole lifetime. I mean, so, but I think 7 or 8 of them are on Amazon, and the rest are on my Patreon.com Spiritual Frequencies site. So that they're available.
I've got that on the ticker here, and we can show. We can show your other books that you have on Amazon. So
yep, Amazon, and the other ones are on Patreon. Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
so we can count them right there.
Yeah, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 available on Amazon right now. So
right.
When did you write your first book?
My first book, trying to remember, I think it was 1972. So, yeah, that was a while ago. Early 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my first book was Pyramid Power.
Okay.
Which still sells. It's still actually in print.
Right.
It's still around. Yeah.
It's one of the books that's available on Amazon. If you didn't know.
Yes.
What inspired you to write spiritual books?
I would say the number one reason was that I had some experience myself of feeling more energized, a little more calm, more relaxed, which a lot of people experience from meditation, relaxation, being in nature. And couple that with the fact that I wanted to be a writer in the first place. I enjoy writing as a teenager. So coupling those two things together was pretty natural for me to feel like, how would I express this to people in writing? And I was very fortunate too to have that first book come out in the 70s, 1972, 73, 74, because I was living in New York City and there's a lot of book publishing there. So I was very fortunate to meet people who were in book publishing. So there was an element of, I guess you could say, good fortune there for me. So I was very grateful for that. And one thing led to another where I just kept writing. I'm still writing almost every day now.
Awesome. And you're putting out videos on YouTube as well.
Yep, I have a YouTube channel, which is connected to my Patreon.com Spiritual Frequencies, which, thank you. It looks like it's going across the screen here.
Yes.
Thank you, by the way. People can find my writings and videos. I do a video at least once every couple of weeks. So I just posted one recently on Pyramid Power last week. So they're there. So for people who are interested, they can learn more about some of the other writings I've done.
Were you always spiritual, or did something happen?
No, that's a great question, because to me, the definition of spiritual is actually being more aware in the moment, which people experience oftentimes by meditation or relaxation. Actually feel better. And I would say previous to that experience, and I can't say experience, but I did have a rare blood disease when I was younger. I think around 1920. And a lot of people experience like a crisis in their life, whether it's a disease or divorce, some kind of natural disaster, a sickness. There's so many ways people can go through a crisis. And that gave me an opportunity to actually ask questions like, why am I here? What are we supposed to do? Do I have a purpose? And then, of course, a lot of people go on a spiritual journey at that point where they read, they learn, they investigate, they meet people, they ask questions. And so that around 20 years old was my first opportunity to really start that process going. And I'm very fortunate it was that early.
Right.
I mean, at the time I didn't like much because can I just be a regular person? Just give me a job, get married, and have children, you know?
Exactly. I'm 51 and I didn't start going through an actual, I would say, active spiritual awakening until I was 46, 47. And so here I am doing a spiritual show. So there you go.
No, thank you for having me on, by the way. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. It slipped my mind to say thank you for joining me tonight. So where did you get the idea to write Star Consciousness?
My intention was really, I think I even dedicated the book to people who are energy sensitive. There are many people who are energy sensitive. They walk a room, they walk into an environment of some kind, and they feel sometimes wonderful, positive energy, and other ones feel maybe sometimes overloaded or extremely pressured by some environmental influence. But they haven't really had any training or anyone tell them that they can learn how to handle or manage that energy. So my original thought was, let me try to write something short. It's only about 100 and some pages, and right to the point, practical, full of practical way to actually manage your energy from day to day. And that was my intention, to do that. Something that was simple, not too complicated. There's a couple of sections that are a little more difficult to read, but why not challenge your reader a little bit? So I did that. But I think if a person reads it and applies some of the things in the book, they actually can manage their day-to-day energy. And I can even give an example from Monday in my class, if you don't mind me sharing that, at the University of Nevada here.
Well, let's tell the viewers what you do too.
Yeah, I mean, I want to get practical. These are things that, by the way, these are things that I apply myself. So it wasn't I just made them up. It was through long experience and testing. And of course, they're not for everyone. Some people will like what I have to say, some will not. But for example, on Monday, when I was in class, I teach a class at the university on ancient and medieval civilizations, but I turned it into a game, and that's a whole other topic. But at the end of the presentation for the Mayans, they have to give a 10-question quiz. So I posted the quiz, and then as you can understand, and today in this world, technology did not work. So they had 2 minutes to get me the quiz. And I had, had 26 students all upset and stressed because the technology would not download the quiz. And then when they tried to send me the quiz, they didn't know how to highlight the answers. Anyway, it was all good. But the thing is, I felt like a tremendous amount of, I would call it stress energy. But because what I did is I became conscious that I knew where it was coming from, and it was nobody's fault. But the beauty of it was it taught me a lesson. It made me think about what else can I do to make that process easier. And that's learning how to manage the energy rather than just be angry or frustrated. I did feel some frustration, but it was a signal to me to how can we redo it? How can we change the energy? I won't go into great detail, but I changed the procedure. Everybody's happier. We're going to do it next week. And I told them, if that doesn't work, we'll try another way. So people are happier and feel better about how they're taking their quiz. Something that simple was something that actually applied the things from the book. So step one is always to be aware. Step two is, what can I do to manage the energy? And there's several steps that you can go through. Like, I let it go. I thought about it. I have a
Mm-hmm.
tendency to be very obsessed about fixing things really fast. I said,
Mm-hmm.
no, go home, make lunch, take a nap. But it wasn't easy, by the way. I wanted
Right.
to make it perfect. But
Right.
no. That's part of getting to know yourself. And then I did my little mini meditation, and then a whole bunch of different ideas came to mind. You could try this, you can try that. And so when you manage your energy that way, and when you get to that place where you're more mellow or relaxed or tuned in, I call it star consciousness. You can call it anything. The main point is you experience it. You have the experience
Right.
of feeling better, more in tune. So I think I kind of gave you a little mini description of what I went through on Monday.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think you just gave us a simple explanation of star consciousness, so we can skip that question. Why be conscious, though? I mean, why? I mean,
One more.
to control our emotion. Check technology. Is that right?
It's all good. It's all good. I'm here. I'm still back. We're live. Ask me that question again if you had one. I missed it.
Okay, let's ask the section, how to expand your consciousness.
Okay, yeah, how to expand your consciousness. Well, first of all, it's hard to define consciousness other than the fact that you can experience a greater awareness in the moment. And it does take a little practice. It's not that complicated. But why would anybody do that in the first place? I mean, often people will say, well, I'm conscious. I'm picking up my telephone. I've got my book. I'm reading it. That's a form of daily consciousness. But when you're conscious in the moment, you're actually choosing to be more aware in the present. You're observing, you notice your thoughts, you notice your images going through your mind. It's neither good or bad. You simply observe. And by doing that, you actually slow down the automatic tendency to think constantly. I'm sure you know people who have difficulty sleeping at night because their mind can't turn off. Okay. So the first step is to be aware of that as far as expanding your consciousness. You have to be willing to go through whatever steps it's necessary for you to learn how to slow down the automatic thinking process. And there's lots of steps that you can do to do that. And everybody's different how that works. There's no pat answer. So that's the first step. The next step, after you begin to slow down your automatic thinking and observe the fact that you are automatic thinking, and it's not a bad thing because there's a lot of good things out of that too. But then you have a choice. You have a choice to actually enjoy being in the moment. It's an enjoyment. It's a pleasure. It's an experience that you can have, and people have it in different ways. I mean, there are people who love nature, and they feel very tuned in and tuned up and relaxed and calm. That's an expansion of consciousness. When you expand your consciousness, most people will have creative ideas. Maybe I should try this. Maybe I should do that. Maybe this would be something I'd be interested in. Maybe you have some goal that you're working on in your life that's important to you, but you've been stuck on what to do next. Then some image or thought or intuition or hint, you can get that both internally and externally. You can get that from a person you hang out with. You could be sitting there, have a random musical show on of some sort, and some musical thing happens, and you go, oh, wow, that gave me an inspiration. Expansion of consciousness happens different for different people. But that experience actually gives you a sense of upliftment. And I call it tuning to the spiritual frequencies. But again, whatever you want to call it, it's fine. But the experience is the most important thing. Having that experience for you.
Exactly. I think we should have talked about we're all light beings and we're frequencies and we are stars. And that's what Carl Sagan talks about. And
star stuff.
Star stuff.
I think I relate to it in the book. A couple years ago, my son and I, we went on the national, Dane and Daddy Pass National Park Tour. Because it was silly, but we had fun. And we went to Bryce Canyon National Park several years ago. I think I mentioned this in the book.
Yes.
And we went to a woman who spoke on the stars and where the molecules and the atoms in our body, very bodies, actually come from. And it was very spacey, but very scientific at the same time. It was about 300 people there. And she's telling us that the atoms and molecules of our body came out of a supernova, could be 100 million years ago, millions of years ago. And at first you go like, what? This sounds insane. But she based that on science. And she, of course, was also a student of Carl Sagan, who did the first version of the cosmos. And so literally we are made up of star stuff. And you can go through there are several books written on this that you could look into and scientists who've talked about it. But then how do you translate that fact into living in star consciousness so that you're aware of the quality of who you are and experience it from day to day the best you can, and what methods and means will work for you to have you do that. So yeah, it's kind of fun, and it really gives you kind of a boost of inspiration. So literally, when you look at the stars at night, we're part of star stuff, but it doesn't seem that way based on how we're raised. You know, we're not
how
raised.
Our society hasn't taught us that.
Exactly. So, although some of our scientists are now teaching us that, so that's kind of cool. Yeah,
it's exciting stuff. I see a lot of changes here in the near future with that kind of stuff. Okay, can you share how to live, function as an energy being?
Okay, well, that's the step. Basically, most of us, and it's just part of how our culture works worldwide, and it has a function. It's an important function. We often think of us, we're just bodies. We're physical bodies walking around. And we are in some extent, there's no doubt about it. But our bodies are energy systems, energy systems. So there has to be, in my opinion, and people can test this out for themselves. You can either read the book or not read the book. But if you do, at some point you have to change the way you feel, see, and act about your life. So you are an energy being. So part of you has to retrain and think of yourself as an energy being. So whatever environment you're in is energy. Your physical self is an energy. So when you start thinking and feeling and functioning as an energy being, you pick up on energy from your environment, with people, from yourself.
I'm sorry, you're cutting out. Sorry, folks. Okay. There's some interference here. He may have to. Well, we've kind of lost our guest.
There we go. I'm not using Chrome. I'm using Firefox, so maybe that's part of it. But I've got good internet. All my bars are fully
awesome.
There. So
okay.
Where did we leave off? I was talking about how to become an energy being.
Right. So, and we were kind of talking. Well, you were saying we're energy beings that feel, think, process thoughts.
Well, what happens is if you actually, I don't like the word reprogram, practice seeing, feeling, experiencing, looking, everything all day long, every day as an energy person and not as a physical person. I'll give you an example. Many, many years ago, when my son was about 5 years old, I showed him a rose quartz. And I said, what do you think? Isn't this great energy in this rose quartz? He says to me, that's just a rock. That's just a thing. I said, well, and of course that's part of his conditioning, and that was appropriate maybe for his age. But to me, there was some vitality there, some vibrational quality that was, I could feel it. And as you become more conscious, and a lot of times people say, what do you mean conscious? Well, it's hard to put in words because you have to practice it, but it's generally a state of wordless awareness. It means that you're not over-identified with the images and words, thoughts and feelings that are going on internally. And when you do that, you start to open up to the now moment more. And it's a process to do that. But as you practice it, you get more and more in the now. And when you do that, you actually become more sensitive to vibration. Absolutely. You can call it frequency, vibration, energy. You can feel it. So there are people, when you ask them, "Wow, did you feel intensity in that room today?" They'll say to you, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Now, sometimes I know they did feel a system in place where, well, that didn't really happen. You know, they did denial or whatever you want to call it. And it's everybody different places, and they have to learn their own way. But those of us who become more sensitive through being more aware or more conscious, it's important for us to learn to manage the energy. So we start to evolve into becoming more energy beings, not just physical beings, which is a beautiful thing too. I mean, having a physical body is a great opportunity to learn. And but having the ability to manage your energy, to direct your energy. So one of the things I mentioned in the book, as an energy being, the first law of human energy, according to what I write anyway, is energy follows attention. So whatever you put your attention on, that's where your energy goes. So, like for example, on Monday when I was, you know, I felt a little frustrated. I felt bad for the students. I could have chosen to be upset the rest of the day and maybe even depressed, or who knows. Blame it on someone, blame it on technology. I don't blame it on, you know, blame it. That's a great way to go. You've got to blame it. I said, no, what can we do about it? You know, what can we do about it? So I was able to come up with a new plan. And I even told the students, this plan may not work either, but we're in a pandemic. So if you come into a classroom and I hand out pieces of paper, everybody fills them out. I pick them up and put them in your folders. We're done. But if you have 15 people on Zoom, 15 people in the room, 3 people who are sick, you know, and there's no paper.
There's no paper anywhere.
There's no paper anywhere. It's all online. It's all technology. So, but I chose in that moment to be conscious. It took a minute. I wasn't like instantly aware, but I felt the energy. So I'm functioning as an energy being in that situation. So a kind of a negative situation, in quotation marks, became an opportunity to create.
Right.
Directing your when energy follows attention, you actually have the opportunity to change how you do things. And I know that some teachers might have gone into, can't believe we can't have to do it this way, and we used to be so much easier, and we just pass out a piece of, okay, I felt those things, but I went from there to something else and came up with another way to do it. So when you're an energy being, your creativity improves dramatically. You look at situations energetically and you ask, how can I manage and redirect the energy so I can transform the energy and actually make it into a different situation? It sounds like common sense, but when you do it, it's very liberating.
Yeah, I found that in this process myself is we do have to strip away that programming, very much so.
Yes, exactly.
Our upbringing, our society, our beliefs, our judgments, in order to get in that space of consciousness, to be able to create a different situation. So
that's what I mean by becoming an energy being. You actually change how you handle most situations, whether I gave example of me teaching or working. It can be in relationships, it can be in your creativity, it can be in your work. There's a lot of ways you can apply a change in how you handle the energy with people, positive, negative people, neutral people. It just the whole world just opens up to you in a whole different way of how you handle it as opposed to just going like with your automatic beliefs or how you were programmed or pre-programmed by society. And so that's kind of what I'm getting at in our consciousness.
Exactly. Well, you have this little, and it's not just little, it's very powerful, I would say. Can you explain this?
Right.
Yeah.
The alpha. Alpha. It's called the alpha. It's called the alpha omega circuit. So one of the things, I was very fortunate to have a teacher when I lived in New York City who was an electronic engineer and also very spiritually inclined. And once a month, I post some of his previous work. He's passed away many years ago, but he said if I ever had the opportunity to get his work out, that I would. And I posted on, and I post most of it or a lot of it for free and for just anybody for every so often on my Patreon area. That's again, you're flashing it across the screen, Patreon /spiritual frequencies. You'll go right to the site. But he created the alpha omega circuit. He got that in his meditation. And when you place your hands according to the steps that I outlined in the book, it actually, helps dissipate or discharge something that might be a false belief or a negative belief or a belief that's holding you back. Does it do it all at once instantly? No, not necessarily. But I tried to introduce at least one tool of many be done to let go of old past patterns that may be more scientifically based. So you have to test it for yourself. I tell people, if you want to use it wisely and test it out. Don't just believe it.
Right.
Different techniques there that I describe. And if it works for you, use it.
Interesting. I have to be honest.
Omega circuit.
I haven't tried it.
It's a short introduction. Yeah, try it. I do recommend to people, test it for yourself. Write about in all my books, my basic foundation in terms of how I feel inside, you have to test everything anybody says. If it's an author, if it's an authority, if it works for you, use it. If it doesn't work for you, it's not for you. There's so many ways of going. There's thousands of books, thousands of ways. There was a time, this teacher I told you about who lived in New York City, when he was younger, he told me in the 1930s and the 1940s, when one of his friends would get a book, they'd pass it among themselves and they would handwrite it out. They didn't have books like we have today. Go right to the store, go on Amazon, order it, read it, practice it, study it. He said, no, we didn't have books like that then, or we couldn't afford them if we could find them. So we're very fortunate to have plenty of opportunity now. So many ways of finding these things out.
Downloading them.
Download it, go on the internet, Google it.
Are there any, how about low-level frequencies? I know you kind of talk about low-level frequencies in your book, and I really relate to that. And you give examples as far as like getting rid of low-level frequency people. Your life.
I don't know if I use the word get rid of, but I know what you mean.
Terminate.
But
them in your life.
No. Well, if you have a situation, and a lot of us do come across this from time to time, whether it's somebody at work, if it's get into a relationship situation where it's a family member maybe or something like that, you sometimes get around a situation, it's very degenerative. I mean, not energizing, let's put it that way.
Yeah. And
there are several steps you can go through, but one, I talk about learning how to go in neutral rather than be angry. Other than if you feel the anger, be aware of it. But I'm saying you can learn to go in neutral in the sense that you're not overreacting. Let's put it that way. The minute you react intensely, you actually the situation energy. So as an energy being, you learn to not go with that less and less and less. Eventually, if you practice that, you actually reach a state of relative neutral where you're not feeding it any much energy at all. And what happens is you don't attract it as much at all at that point. Sometimes the relationship will change, or sometimes a person will just disappear. They'll move,
Right.
They'll go somewhere else. They don't really want to hang out with you anymore. You're too weird for them or something, you know. And
Or they get blocked.
Exactly. So you rather than just try to attack back, you learn how to let go and not overreact to what a person does. And that's a very difficult situation to be in, because I can relate to that, and it's tough. But so becoming an energy being isn't all about pie in the sky. It's also learning how to handle a difficult situation and work through it step by step energetically. And of course, you have to test it out and see if it works for you. But generally, when you are not as reactive, the situation tends to dissipate or even go away.
Right.
You can manage your time. You can also manage your time better. So if you know you're going to be around, say, a person that you tend to feel more negative around them for some reason, who knows what, you can anticipate ahead of time. You can plan. You can say, okay, maybe I will be more relaxed when I go in that situation. Maybe I will choose not to be so tired when I meet up with them and drained out already from a long day of activity. So you can plan how to be in a better state. You can also learn not to overreact to what they say or what they do, and maybe not try to convince them of your point of view. That's another important step as an energy being. Some people, you just don't convince them logically. It's just simple. So just let it go.
Right.
Yeah. So things of that, practical things like that are helpful.
Very much so. It makes life a lot easier. Trust me.
Yeah.
And some of that stuff that you were just talking about, taking or diffusing the emotional charge that you're feeling. I've learned rapid eye movement, and
there you go.
That seems to help too.
I'm for anything that helps. Believe me.
Right.
Yeah.
Whatever tool does the trick for you to get it done. Right.
Use it.
Yeah. Do you have anything
Yeah.
Sorry, you're breaking up. Do you have anything else that you'd like to share from Star Consciousness that you feel that we haven't covered?
I would say the number one thing is that you potentially can live more and more in Star Consciousness.
You're breaking
someone
up.
Who lives in a state of negativity or problems all the time, or discouragement, of depression. You can learn to train yourself to let go of those things and not feed it energy. It's not sometimes easy, and sometimes people say to me, well, that's good for you to say, but if you take the time to practice these steps bit by bit, there has to be a certain element of patience, a willingness to go on one step at a time. And you actually live more and more in that state of, I guess some of the scientific terms are, you move from beta wave to alpha wave. So when you meditate, you're actually changing the vibrational rate of your energy field, I guess you could say. It slows down the vibration in the sense that you're not tuned into anything, less negativity or less obsessive thought or automatic thinking, and you actually will enjoy your life a lot more. When you start consciousness, what happens is your creative energy starts to really propel you forward on a day-to-day basis. And you actually rather go to that feeling state of meditation, off a wave, whatever you want to call it. And when you're in that state, you actually see more or less what to do in the moment. It sort of comes to you. You don't really have to figure it out. Sort of just intuitively, your intuition actually becomes more keen and more active. And your intellectual faculty, what you think if you can figure everything out by all night long about something, you're going to get the answer. You start to let go of that, and you actually experience just allow the universe to work with you. Allow your star consciousness to help you out, and just be receptive to whatever is necessary in the situation. So that's the primary purpose of the book, or any good teaching, is to somebody actually fulfilling purpose. And that's a whole nother thing, to discover what your purpose is. That's a whole nother process. A lot of people, some people don't. I don't know. You ever meet anybody who seems to know what they want to be? I was always amazed by those people. They're like 15 years old. Yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be this. And I'm going like, wow. We all seem to have some element of purpose. It doesn't have to be anything big or small, but it's something that makes us feel energized what we're doing.
You're breaking up.
Yeah, well.
We broke up.
Technology.
Yeah. It's it's one of those things. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing when it works well.
Yeah. I have today when I was in my classroom, we use Zoom in the classroom. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Zoom now. So I'm about 10 minutes into the class, the Zoom freezes and nothing happens. Just locked in. I can't even turn off the computer or turn it back on to reboot. And I had to call someone to help come over and reset the computer. And the guy said, I've not seen this in all the years I've been at the university. Your computer just freezes. So things happen, but it was okay.
Exactly. Do you want to give us?
And so sometimes you just got to go with it.
Yeah, you got to go with the flow.
I do hear you now, and I do see you. Go with the flow, and technology can be that way.
Exactly. Do you want to?
You have so many listeners and viewers tonight. It's probably overloading from the enthusiasm of your audience.
I honestly think it's this live stream because I was watching a live stream earlier, and I was seeing that they were having technical problems just like us. So did you want to talk about Gateway to Stardust, your next book coming out next year?
Sure. Yeah, the book is written, the book is edited, and we're in production now. We're going very slow because the pandemic, we just don't know which way to go with it right now. So how we're going to design it and everything like that. But for example, one of the main chapters in the book is living rhythmically. And so everything goes in a rhythmic cycle, whether it's the moon cycles, the waves of the ocean, the breathing, and learning how to discover your own natural rhythm. So often, a lot of us get caught up in the rhythm of what our time society wants us to live by. And of course, I'm not saying to people, okay, stop tomorrow. Don't get up at 6 o'clock when the alarm goes off. Don't go to work. What I'm saying is learn how to be more in tune with what your natural rhythm is by steps, one step at a time. So if you are too active, take time to be less active. If you're thinking too much, take time to relax and not think as much, whether it's something creative, some kind of relaxation technique, meditation, exercise that you enjoy. So you're learning to balance. So rhythmic living is about balancing, but you have to have I call it self-observation. Some of us have very acute self-observation. In fact, I meet people that are so self-observing, it's almost painful to watch them because they notice every little thing that they do. But self-observation self-reflection and self-observation is a big thing. Years ago, I developed a friendship with somebody, and they said, well, when you meet someone, what do you look for? I said, if I see self-reflection, self-observation, I'm very interested in getting to know that person because they notice they have a thought. They notice they feel a certain something. They notice they could do it better next time than they did it this time. Some people are not that self-observant. So I talk about that in Gateway to Stardust, how to go through the steps of being more aware in the moment. And I cover this also in Star Consciousness. What are the steps to becoming more conscious? And so if a person feels like, well, I'm not that conscious, I don't know what you mean, just a very, very act of self-observation is a form of consciousness that is more elevated than just routine everyday consciousness. So I talk about that in greater extent in Gateway to Stardust. Then I have some fun chapters in this new book, and I have 3 chapters. One is on the transformation that you see in art. One is an art, and I track an art. Hey, here we go. We're back. I did track an artist through 8 paintings that she did, and the transformational steps she went through as a person reflected in her art. So I have a whole chapter on that. And then I have another chapter on the mythological patterns in Harry Potter, the Philosopher's Stone. So chapter by chapter I go through. Yeah, I have some fun chapters like that. And so I was very fortunate when I lived in New York. One of the teachers that I had was a fellow, his name was.
Sorry, you're breaking up again.
YouTube. Yeah.
I'm.
I'll take a sip
Could you
of my
repeat that?
Water here.
Your Star Water. Could you repeat your teacher
I'm going
York?
to repeat that.
Okay, thank you.
When I lived in New York, I was very fortunate to have a teacher who studied with a gentleman named Joseph Campbell. He wrote a book he wrote several books, but called Power of Myth. You can go on the internet and Google it, and there's a whole series that's available to watch on how mythological patterns affect us and how it's been part of our culture throughout the world for literally thousands of years. So I was able to study with this gentleman. So when I read the Harry Potter books, I actually went and used the Joseph Campbell material. He wrote a book called The Hero of a Thousand Faces.
Breaking up again.
Journey pattern. And so in the chapters on the Philosopher's Stone having to do with Harry Potter, the mythological patterns are repeated in that book right to the T, right out of his book. I mean, different words, different circumstances, different challenges, but the basic hero journey is you're living your day-to-day life of just automatic awareness and consciousness, and then something happens. It can be anything. It could be a death in the family. It could be ailment. It could be a natural disaster. But you go through an awakening process. There was a British psychologist who called it conscious shock. It just means sometimes when you go through a difficult situation, it heightens your awareness temporarily. So then you open up into another world. You start the so-called hero journey. And the journey is to actually discover what is it that you have to learn? What is it you need to know? And it happens in a variety of ways. You can oversimplify it by just saying it here, but everybody has their own individual hero and heroine journey that they're going through. And usually it has to do with accepting the challenge. So a lot of times people don't want to deal with it. It's too much. So it's like, just let me just sit there and like relax and just not be bothered. What's on television, you know? But sometimes we have to face the music. So I talk about the hero journey in that book and how it applies to all of us. And one of my fun chapters in that book is a lot of people have tattoos today. So I had 3 of my friends, I noticed their tattoos, and I said, would you mind if I took a photo of your tattoo, or you gave me a photo of your tattoo, and I'll do a mythological analysis of your tattoo. So 3 tattoos in the book, and I talk about mythological patterns in tattoos. Because literally anything you look at, whether it's art, theater, music, has patterns in it. And I also included their own description of what they saw and felt in the book. So we talk about that. So a fun book. It has a lot of color in it. Has a lot of poetry.
Wow.
Yeah, whereas, yeah.
I want to read it now.
Okay, well, I'll send it to you. It's in manuscript form. You can still read it now. We're still editing now.
I have a lot of reading, so I'll wait till it comes out. I'll come down to Reno and get it signed, or wherever you're at.
I'll give you the Sparks notes.
I have to get to work on mine. I have to restructure mine. So.
No, I know the work that goes into it. Believe me, I give you a lot of credit for doing it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of detail, a lot of detail.
It is. Well, you turned me to the book, The Story for screenwriting.
Oh yeah, the storybook, yeah, by
Yeah.
Robert McGee. Robert McGee.
Yes, yes. So now I'm taking my first book. Well, I have to finish the story, reading that before I can write my screenplay for the first book.
Yeah.
So it's a process.
For those of you who are interested in screenwriting, there is a book by Robert McGee it's called Story, yes. And it gives you the basic steps of how to write a screenplay. But also, he was aware of Joseph Campbell and the hero journey teachings. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that this is very, a lot of synchronicity here because my book does have to deal with a hero and the hero's journey.
There you go.
So,
yeah.
And the Epic of Gilgamesh is part of it.
Yep. Perfect. Well, that's something we do in our ancient civilization course. So whichever civilization gets the Gilgamesh story, they usually bring it up. I have the students teach the course. I just have to guide them along. So, so they learn themselves. They learn themselves. I don't tell them anything. In fact, they sometimes get annoyed with me. Well, can't you just give us a lecture today so we can get it over with and take a test? I said, we don't have any tests in our class. Thanks for laughing. I get a lot of that.
Oh, boy.
Well, what are we supposed to do?
You're supposed to learn. Read this.
Yeah, exactly. Learn on your own. Learn because you're going to learn, not me tell you anything. Really. Yeah.
Exactly. Can you share with us what your Pendulum books are about?
Oh, sure. Okay.
Content?
For those watchers and viewers and listeners who don't know what a pendulum is, I wrote 2 books on the pendulum. And the pendulum is it's any device or any weight on the end of a string or chain.
I don't have one with me.
I might have one over here next to my desk. And this is just one I happen to have right by my desk right now.
Cool.
Somebody made for me. It just has a crystal or gemstone on the end. And the basic theory is you can ask a question, a yes/no question. There's other kinds of questions besides yes and no. And it'll rotate a certain way. You know, it might be clockwise for yes, counterclockwise for no. So you could question about anything. And in the books that I wrote, I have chapters on different ways you can use the pendulum to ask questions about health, about relationships, about goals for the future, the wisdom of the situation. It's vast. It's literally anything you want to ask. And you can learn how to use a pendulum to actually sharpen your intuitive ability. So that's just sort of a mini little introduction to what the pendulum is. And there's many other ways. I mean, people learn from different ways. I mean, it's a form of what they call divination, of knowing something directly through, it might be through, it might be a deck of cards that you use. It might be somebody who just, they use what do you call it? Like numerology is another method. So there's many methods of divining information. But the key that I talk about in the pendulum books is a lot about how energy, you really can't be in a state of wanting to have the answer the way you want it when you ask the question. So the more personal you are about your question, sometimes the more difficult the way the pendulum moves, you can make it move by your own thoughts and feelings. I have a whole section on that in the book, how to experiment with that. So you have to, it's a technique, it's a skill, but it's a wonderful skill to have. It's been around a long time, thousands of years.
Do you teach how to program your pendulums in those books? Yeah,
there's different ways of programming the pendulum. By programming, we mean how to determine what is your positive answer, your yes, what is your negative answer, your no. And when I do the pendulum shops that I do from time to time, I'll just actually have the person hold the pendulum that they're using, and you can even ask, show me my yes, and you just wait to see how it moves. For some people, a yes might be more a vertical back and forth. A negative or a no might be a horizontal. Clockwise could be a yes, or it could be a no, but show me what my yes or no is. Then you have to experiment from there. I usually have them start with very simple questions, just to develop confidence and awareness of what works for you. And so that's a simple way of programming your pendulum to get answers. Once you learn how to do a yes/no question, then you can get into like questions that have to do with levels of degree on a 0 to 10 scale. For example, you could ask on a 0 to 10 scale, how wise would it be for me to do such and such, such and such at this time or in the near future? And an 8, 9, or 10 might be, yeah, good timing right now. Lower number may not be good timing right now. So we, in the workshops, learn how to do both yes and no questions and degree questions on a 0 to 10 scale.
Oh, I want to go to one of those.
Yeah, it's fun. They're interesting, and I've seen a lot of people do very well with the pendulum, but I always encourage people to follow your heart, find out what works for you, and then explore that as much as possible. So from time to time, I do come across people that really like the pendulum, and they get a lot of mileage out of it as far as their intuitive awareness develops.
I guess I really need to sit down and connect with my pendulums, my cards.
Well, yeah, whatever. And the key is it has to work for you. You have to feel like, okay, this is giving me some really wonderful insight and direction. And
exactly.
when you find that, I say people pursue that until it doesn't feel comfortable anymore. Because any way you can develop greater awareness, greater consciousness, more a sense of who you are and what would be the wisdom of your situation in your life, use that as much as you can, as long as it feels comfortable.
Exactly.
So the pendulum is just one tool among many.
Yeah. There was something I was going to add. I don't know. Is there anything else you would like to share tonight? We're coming to the close of the show. We got about 8 minutes left.
I would just encourage people to, if you're sensitive to energy, if you heard some of the things and I've mentioned, and that sounds like something you're into and you're aware of, there's a lot of ways you can learn to handle it better. Sometimes people will say, well, I'm an empath. Okay. Well, if you're an empath, you tend to be very sensitive. You pick up vibes. But the key is, how do you manage that energy? It can be overwhelming for a lot of people. So my primary purpose of writing the book is for the people who are overwhelmed by circumstances on a regular basis. How can they manage that energy better? And so, as I mentioned earlier, changing how you view yourself from just being an automatic mechanical person walking around feeling helpless and hopeless. You can get over that once you have a sense of being more aware and you have choices. Choices is very empowering. So if you look at a situation, like going back to my example that I talked about when I had the class on Monday and we had that difficulty with that quiz. Yeah, okay, I was overwhelmed temporarily, but I applied what I talked about in the book or write about in the book. I can change the way I react. I can change the way I handle it. I can learn to transmute the energy. I can move back to more of a conscious state. I can get a creative idea. I can come up with a new plan. That is very empowering. So you can move away from feeling overwhelmed and not empowered to changing that on your own. You don't need to have someone tell you what to do. You can make some conscious choices about how to change it.
Exactly.
So when you do that, yeah, it's a process, but I just want to have that message out to people that there are ways of feeling more empowered on your own.
And it's actually an excellent book, and it does give step-by-step information on how to be aware in your daily life. And it's a very easy read, a lot of summary, key points, just wonderful little book to keep
I
with
try
you.
to make it short and simple and something you could refer back to very quickly if you wanted to. So I didn't want to go into a long-winded 300-400-page book with all kinds of minute research from authorities around the world, but rather something you could look at and say, this chapter to me, I'll just look at this chapter. You can even look at sections. You can look at summaries. Let me go back to chapter 5 and look at the summary. There was something there that benefited me when I applied it. So the key is looking for things that work for you by testing it out. And when you do that, that's the empowerment that you can receive and the ability to not be at the mercy of whatever's happening from day to day.
Right. A lot of people walking around like, oh, I can't, get out of this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And well, yes, you can, because you have a choice, right?
You have a choice. And so the idea of star consciousness, when you're conscious, choices open up. When you're unconscious, choices seem like they're not there. It's that simple, but you have to be. So next time you feel,
I'm sorry, you're breaking up again.
no, okay. No, I look better. There we go. There's a little bit's coming back.
There we go.
Hey.
Did you repeat yourself?
By the way, I like Julie. I like your back. Yeah.
You like my halo?
So the bottom line is, yeah, I like your halo. It's very mandala-like. But yeah, so you have opportunity to make changes and choices. You don't have to blame. You don't have to be in denial. You don't have to say, I have bad luck. Nothing works out for me. By the way, when you do all those things, you make it worse. You actually give it more energy because energy follows attention. But when you change your attention to other choices, and it's not something some people can do, other people, it takes practice. But as you choose not to focus on that which feels uncomfortable or drains you or makes you feel negative, or you open up different pathways and opportunities. So that's really my strongest message. And that anyone who, also the other thing besides is a lot of people already know what I'm talking about. They pick up the energy all the time, but they need more tools to be able to manage the energy. So I'm looking to talk to and communicate with those people as well.
Right, exactly. That's kind of my purpose here with my show.
Yeah. Thank you for the show, by the way. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Greg. I just want to thank you for coming on and talking to me tonight, and thank my viewers for coming and viewing us tonight. And good night.
Good night, and thanks for having me. Adios. All power to the people.